When you look around, what do you see? Humans have always been biophilic. We have an innate affinity with imagery and sensations that remind us of what we see in nature. Plus, the fresh air helps clear our lungs, and the sunlight naturally stimulates the production of vitamin D, which assists our immune system, and can boost the uptake of serotonin, which helps regulate our sleep and appetite. But some can see destruction. Landscape Architect Alexandra Steed has dedicated her work to what she describes as repairing humans' broken relationship with nature.
For me, the utmost expression of beauty in our world is nature. Both of my parents were gardeners, they were avid gardeners, and so that was instilled in me from a very young age to love the beauty of the world around us. And so I think that's always been sort of a key quest of mine, is to search for beauty in all things. I then went on to study art, and there I found I was often focusing on the natural world, so doing prints of beautiful trees or paintings of landscapes. And through the course of my degree, I realized actually I would much rather than be depicting the landscape, to be creating the landscapes and to create places which were very inviting for people and would engage people and connect them to the natural world. I hadn't even heard of landscape architecture, but I bumped into a friend at university, and he described to me that he was taking this course. And as soon as I heard about it, I just thought, oh, well, that's for me. That's perfect. And so I went ahead and did a master's degree in landscape, and I've never looked back. We've been born into quite a dysfunctional relationship with the natural world in our urban environments, especially in the Western world. I believe that we are probably more disconnected from nature. There's so many reasons for this. It's a very complicated issue. We are now living in very urbanized and industrial spaces. And so as a default, we are disconnected from the land. If you look at our streets, we're severed from the soil beneath our feet. The soil and the water and the air above are all disconnected from each other as well. So it's this horrible kind of situation where everything has become disconnected when in reality it all should be connected, and that's what makes things thrive.
The feeling of demand and exploitation is something Alexandra has faced down professionally as well. Research from trade journals finds that only 31% of architects are female. In academia, 55% of males are given tenure and only 40% of females. And 75% of males take an associate degree compared to 25% of females.
You know, in the design industry, and I'm sure in many industries, there's so much pressure on people to be working long hours, not taking care of themselves in the way they could be. And what I wanted to do at Urban was to create an environment where we could do both. We could have an excellent product and experience for our clients and feel that we were producing work of the highest quality, but at the same time showing it's entirely possible to do that while ensuring quality of life for the team. A lot of women I know, including myself, have found that in certain work environments, we've really had to go above and beyond to prove ourselves. We've had to work harder, longer hours, possibly have greater education behind us to be able to achieve what many of our male colleagues are able to achieve. And at the same time, often women in their 20s or 30s are having children. And so they're having to take time off to attend to that, of course. And I think it can make them feel limited in what they're able to achieve. So all of these things can be very difficult for women. And then, of course, there's the fact that at the senior level, there aren't as many women. So therefore, there's not as many mentors for the young women trying to come up through the ranks. I know that was something I really struggled with to find a female mentor because it isn't always comfortable for a man and a woman to be in a mentoring situation. It can become complicated and nuanced and gray, and there's a huge amount of sexual harassment in the workplace. I mean, all over the place. I've dealt with it. Many of my female colleagues have dealt with it. And it's terribly difficult to work in that kind of environment.
In spite of all the work that has been done, I think women do still face many challenges in the workplace, unfortunately. We're looking at gender bias, stereotypes, unequal opportunities, stigma around women's health, and all of these things, I think, have a very real psychological impact. If women feel a particular pressure to prove themselves, for example, they're likely very quickly to start struggling with anxiety, stress, leading her to start perhaps doubting her abilities, questioning her performance, and we start to see things like imposter syndrome creeping in. We know that even full-time working women are still bearing responsibility for the majority of domestic responsibilities and childcare responsibilities. And because of the maternal bias that they're facing in the workplace, they also feel this huge pressure, I think, to prove their commitment to the job. And this comes across in many different ways. It might mean working extra hours. It might mean volunteering for extra projects. And I think one of the really damaging impacts is that it means it's very hard for women to ask for what they need to actually improve their work-life balance. The other thing that I see a lot in practice is guilt. We see a lot of, what we might call mum guilt, I suppose. They're managing the domestic and the childcare on the one hand, and they're also managing their paid employment on the other. And often very wrongly, actually, but women can often feel they're not really living up to expectation in either. The reality is that changing the narrative is challenging. And it's challenging because there are very deep-rooted societal and cultural norms that we are trying to push against. And I think what we really need is a collective effort to change the narrative. It means having very open conversations, including male voices. And I genuinely think that, male allies play a pivotal role in challenging and changing the status quo.
It's kind of sad to say, but as a female Asian being here in the UK, to be honest, I've been through a couple of occasions of discrimination. But here in urban, I'm very happy and feel very lucky that I'm working under the leadership of Alexandra, who showed us example of the possibility of breaking through the glass ceiling of a male-dominated industry. And I feel by saying that, I have the passion and hope to work towards a more equal and inclusive industry.
I've definitely always been aware that it is more male, especially my background is in architecture, which is even more male necessarily than landscape architecture. But I've always tried to be a bit particular with the offices that I work for. I have just had a much more enriching experience working with women or female identifying people in the profession. And that's not to say sometimes male professors or colleagues haven't been supportive, but it has often been a more enriching experience.
I think it's very important the team that you are surrounded by. I think the people that is working with you, your colleagues, I think it's very important that they encourage you, that you feel supported by them, that they recognize your hard work.
This nurturing, nourishing approach has reaped rewards, with Urban achieving a number of awards for their work.
Study by Alexandra Steed, Urban.
Sea Park is the name for the vision that we gave to the landscape strategy for the area of South Essex. So Sea Park stands for South Essex Estuary Park. A number of years ago now, I'd say it was in 2019, ASALA, who are the Association of South Essex Local Authorities, all came together because they knew they had to look at the whole of the South Essex region in totality. So they were looking for a series of major strategic frameworks to be put in place for the whole area, one of which was a green and blue infrastructure strategy. So that's what our team was commissioned to complete. One of the exciting things about this project was ASALA realized just how important the landscape strategy was to their region, and they understood that by putting in place a very sort of robust framework, that all of South Essex could be integrated and coordinated in a way that would not only protect the environment, but also protect the communities and the businesses and even the industry that exist within South Essex. You know, when you think about landscape, I think people often think of it just in terms of greening up spaces, quite decorative, when in fact, it's the very foundation of all of our development. It has always existed. It will continue to exist well beyond any development that we as human civilization will deliver. It is the foundation of everything, and it allows for the purification of our water. It allows for decomposition of our waste materials. It allows, for air purification, and the list goes on and on and on about the services and the gifts that nature provides. So the landscape strategy was looking to do all of those things, and in this particular project, we then allocated 30% of the whole of South Essex to be protected landscape areas that would complete a connected framework for the whole region. When we start sort of at the North Sea, coming into the Thames estuary, there's an area called the Island Wetlands. Then we had another one called the Woodland Arc that connected through Rochford. The Central Thames Marshlands that connected areas from Basildon through Castle Point all the way to Thurrock. And then another one that sweeps up through the Mardyke Valley, up through Thurrock and into Brentwood. And then we had the Brentwood Parklands. So there's these 5 major landscapes. And in each of them, it was all about connecting areas of quality landscape, so where there's intact ecosystems, where there's places for local wildlife, where there's important sort of flood mitigation, marshes, heritage areas that have, really magical qualities about them. So we were sort of knitting together all of these places to come up with a connected strategy across these 6 local authorities.
Getting people to have a better connection with the landscape, the coast, and it's done through pathway improvements like rights of way improvements, signage, interpretation, and just like actual interventions that help people make that connection. So there's like a big bird hide, there's some observation decks, there's some better seating. It's nothing like overly ambitious. It's still like a good, like low intervention way of getting people a bit more connected with the coast.
There's a term that's becoming relatively popular in the profession, and it's called landscape-led. So if we were to truly be led by the land, then by default, we would have to be working in a sensitive way with the environment. We would have to be working within a context that is very particular with certain ecosystems, certain wildlife communities, streams, soils, all of these things would be considered. That is my hope for the future, that the development industry will truly become landscape-led. And then by doing that, supporting plants and animals and us, when we create healthy environments, then of course we benefit greatly. There are absolutely no disadvantages to human health and well-being when we work with an environment and respect the natural ecosystems of that area. So that is my hope, that in the future, rather than imposing development on a place, we'll be situating development within a particular landscape. This is something that we need to see across all aspects of society. So whether it's in the profession of architecture and landscape architecture, within the development industry, within sort of our political structures, within the way we approach landscapes. I think for all of it, it's about creating places of equilibrium, of balance, of health and well-being. I really wanted not just landscape architects, but the world to know why landscapes are so important. One of the main points that I make in the book is that, landscapes are the manifestation of the human relationship with nature. It is within the landscape that is physically expressed. Across all of the world's landscapes, urban, rural, wilderness, are places that are laden with contamination and pollution and devastation and destruction. The landscape is where that expression is manifest, but it's also the very place where healing can occur. And that is exactly why They are so important, and why we need to be focused on our landscapes. Because if we are to bring about health and well-being, regeneration, revitalization, it will be manifest in the landscape, and that is where we can rehabilitate our relationship to nature. That's how I see it.